Mark is the president and founder of Atticus, and he's been coaching attorneys on practice management and marketing for 25 years and is a master certified coach. He's co-author of Time Management for Attorneys, How Good Attorneys Become Great Rainmakers, and Hire Slow, Fire Fast. Mark is one of the top legal coaches in the United States. He's a national speaker, and he has a regular column in Lawyers USA. He's the developer of the first personalized training program dedicated to teaching attorneys the lasting skills and habits required for effective practice development and facilitates the Atticus Practice Builder. So Mark, with that, I'll go ahead and turn this over to you.
Thanks, Susan. And you know, as you look at that picture, and as I look at that picture now on the screen, I'm saying, how could someone that young and that good looking be doing this for 25 years? It's just incredible. And I know Lonnie Belby, who's on the line, is thinking that same thing. So if you would, go ahead and make sure you have a pen and paper handy. We are going to do a lot of writing and actually drawing during this segment. And this is actually one of the most fun conversations that I have around Atticus concepts. And what I'm going to do is take you through what we call the strategic pathway. Some of you may have seen the strategic pathway before, and I would tell you it is invaluable to keep going through it because there's more nuances there for your practice and for having a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And I can tell you that those of you that are clients or past clients of Atticus or friends of Atticus, it's the kind of conversation I promise you your competitors are not seeing, and it makes it that much more important to grab this kind of conversation. So one of the questions that we want to answer on this webinar is that why is that most small firms continue to struggle while some thrive and actually grow? And we're going to talk about some of the difficulties in the marketplace, but given that, why do some thrive? Are they smarter than us? Are they better lawyers than us? Do they know something we don't know? We want to answer that on this question. And the other thing is, as an attorney, do you have to trade having a great life, not just a life, but a great life, for more income, for better client care or professional success? Does it have to be this big trade-off? Do I have to just give it all and work evenings, weekends, not have vacations to make sure that I'm doing great client care and I'm getting the income I need or having professional success? And the other question that I want to address on this webinar is, how do I get a competitive advantage? So how do you, in this case, get a competitive advantage in your marketplace, increase your income, decrease your stress, and take better care of your clients and still have a life? So it's sort of answering number two, but it's still, how do we do those same things? And so I think Lonnie and a few of you may have heard this paradox before. It's not on the screen, but I'm just going to give it to you in background. It's called the Stockdale Paradox. Stockdale Paradox. And it's named after Admiral Stockdale. Some of you will remember him because he was Ross Perot's running mate when Ross Perot ran for president, but he has a much richer history than that. Admiral Stockdale was the highest-ranking POW officer in Vietnam. So he was a prisoner of war, and he had the distinction of bringing more POWs out alive than any other commander in Vietnam in POW camps. And later in life, people would ask him, and business gurus would ask him, and he's been interviewed for a number of books, and they would say, how come? What allowed you to bring so many more people out? Why were you successful? And they say things like, well, were you an optimist? And did you just a great inspiring leader that pulled them through? And he said, hell no. Hell no. He goes, quite frankly, the optimists were the first to go. Because when we were in the prison camp, they thought we would be out by Christmas. And when we weren't out by Christmas, they were disappointed. Then they thought, well, we have to be out by Easter. And we did. Easter came and went, and they said, well, at least by the end of the summer or by Thanksgiving, and then Christmas would come and go. And he goes, they would just die of a broken heart. He goes, no, the reason I was able to get people out, and so many people out at life, I had to give them a unwavering faith in that we will get out of here. There is a way out. We have to get out together, and I will lead you and I will get you out there. But at the same time, I had to have them confront the brutal reality of their situation. And he said, and he told them, and they lived this, you're going to be beaten, tortured, humiliated, starved. And these are a reality of where we are. But if you don't understand that, and you think this is going to be something different, you're wrong. So he had to stand in the reality, and the brutal reality in his case, of the situation. And as we look at the legal marketplace, I would say the same thing. Atticus we've been working with attorneys for 25 years, and in the face of some dramatic changes in the marketplace, people have been able to grow their practice, increase their revenues, take better care of their clients, and have a life. And so why is that? And so I'm going to get to the why. But first you have to stand in the reality of the situation. And the legal marketplace has changed. It's changed dramatically. And it's absolutely the reason we all have to step up our game. We all know that client expectations have changed. I mean, in the old days, 30 years ago, people used to fax letters to you. And you would be able to read them. Excuse me, let me say that again. They used to mail letters to you 30 years ago, and as an attorney you would have time to contemplate the issue and read them. And then they started to fax the information to you, and then fax turned into email. And people then started to text you, and they wanted immediate response on things. They have your cell phone numbers. People started to shop more aggressively, and they would learn to negotiate for your services. And now they're using social media. The world's become very small on the internet. So they're using social media, the Avos, the Yelps, the Facebooks, and they have access to other legal services. And we'll talk about those in a minute. So they make you easy targets for commoditization. And if you've been in any conversations with me over the years, you know that part of my background is in economics, and I look at the world through the eyes of an economist. And when I look at the legal profession, we see the growth in the number of lawyers. And by the way, growth in the number of lawyers by itself is not bad. But basically, if you put some numbers to this, in 1968, we had about 167,000 licensed lawyers in this country. So the entire United States, we had about 167,000 licensed lawyers. And if you put that into a ratio of attorneys to the U.S. population, it was one attorney for every 1,250 Americans, roughly. And by the way, that's men, women, and child, not just clients. So we had one for every 1,250. And by the 1980s, that number had grown up to 680,000. So you're talking what, about a 20-year, maybe a little less than 20-year span. We have made dramatic leaps in the number of licensed attorneys. Year 2000, we crossed over 1 million, and we're up past 1.3 million attorneys in this country, licensed attorneys. And if you put that into a ratio today, where in 1968 the ratio was 1 for every 1,250 Americans, now it's 1 for about every 260 Americans, man, woman, and child. Now, I mentioned that growth in lawyers is not bad, because any market you have growth. The problem here is that we're not seeing the demand for legal services. So when you see those ratios switch like they have, 1 to 1,250 to 1 to 260, even 1 to 300, if that's the number, if it's somewhere in that range, what you see is that supply has outstripped demand. We have fewer people to market to, and we have greater supply. And in any market where you have supply that exceeds demand, it starts commoditizing our services. Actually, let me step back and put it another way. In 1968, when people chose a lawyer, they would usually take that lawyer for many things in their life. They would handle family issues. They would be their counselor, their advisor. But in today's marketplace, where it's become so competitive that people use an attorney for a number of attorneys for different things in their life. So it's various specialties. And you didn't have to be a great marketer in 1968. People would seek you out. But in the year 2015, you not only have to be a great marketer, and by the way, you still have to be a great lawyer. You still need the ticket to get in the door. You have to be a good lawyer. But now you have to be a great competitor. You have to be a great business person. You have to be a great marketer. You have to build strong teams around you. Or you don't get to play in the marketplace. So at the same time we see an oversupply of lawyers in the market, we see law schools graduating more and more students. So the last couple of years we've been doing 45,000 a year. 2013 it was 46,000 according to the ABA. And so law schools in this profession don't put a cap on graduates. So in medical industry and some other professions, there's a cap on the number of people you can dump into the market, the supply you can put into the market. We don't have that in the legal profession. And so our law schools are driven by profits more than they are market demand. And certainly you would think market demand would have an impact, wouldn't it? Because sooner or later the law degree becomes not valuable for the lawyer that goes out and tries to compete in this marketplace. But law schools have gotten kind of coy. They say, nope, no problem. We still need the profit. We need the revenue. So they cut to deal with this. They cut prices at the law school. And so we're still dumping people into the market. And at the same time, we have older attorneys. So older attorneys are attorneys my age in their late 50s and early 60s that may have been planning to leave the workforce at some point, maybe in their middle 60s, maybe later 60s, but they're staying longer and longer. So we're not seeing people leaving the market. We're seeing more people entering into the market. So this would be interesting enough if we didn't have globalization. India graduates 70,000 English-speaking attorneys every single year. The New York Bar predicts, and I'm not sure, I have to check on this, whether it's New York itself or the country, but 76,000 attorney jobs would be outsourced. We know that a lot of your paralegals and legal secretary and clerical and research work is being outsourced, but also attorneys' jobs are being outsourced. And then in any market that you have excess supply and you have commoditization of services, you see new competitors on the marketplace. So we have LegalZoom that enters the marketplace, and now they've joined up with Sam's Club. And LegalZoom, by the way, has been very successful. Back in 2011, the last time I saw their profit numbers, they did about 11 million in profit. That's significant. And they have now learned that what they're doing is working, and they expand what they're doing. Google jumped in the market in 2011 with Rocket Lawyer, maybe a little earlier. They invested over 18 million into Rocket Lawyer. Rocket Lawyer back then in 2011 claimed to have 70,000 users a day. And in that time they were doing 10 million in revenue, a lot less than LegalZoom, but they're still growing. We used to joke at Atticus that it was only a short time before something like Walmart jumped into the market, and here we have Walmart with something called Legal Access. So you know that Walmart does prescriptions for eye doctors, and I think they even do prescriptions for medical, and now they have Legal Access. Now this is being experimented with in Canada. Walmart hasn't done it in the States that I know of yet. But it's what happens in any market, and it just happens to be yours. Another innovation coming out of Canada. Lonnie, I don't know what you're putting in the water up there, but a lot of innovation coming out of there. Fairway divorce, and actually I think Lonnie Balby out of Canada turned me on to this. They're doing divorces, but it's not it's not an attorney-based service, and they're competing in the marketplace, telling the market that attorneys are the problem, not the solution, that attorneys are taking a big chunk of the money and that you need to use these packages and these services. And they are making forays into the United States. On top of that, in addition to all of those sort of things, we've got tort reform, PIP reform, state laws changing on taxes, federal tax laws changing. So if you think your market or your services are protected, they're not. And so the predictions that I would assert to you, and that we've made for a little bit, is that 80% of attorneys in the United States will have their income stagnate or drop in the coming years. And I'm pretty comfortable with that prediction. And that being a good lawyer is obviously a ticket into the profession and critical, but it's not enough to maintain a competitive advantage. And some of you are not going to like this and the conversations we're going to have. But clearly you have to be a good lawyer to get into the marketplace, but it's not going to be enough. And you're going to have to play a bigger game. You're going to have to find new ways to create client value because the client is far more in control than they ever have been. We're going to have to customize a little bit more, and we have to build much stronger relationships than we've had in the past. So I know that that's bad news when I go through those scenarios. And I go that because it's standing in the brutal reality, as Admiral Stockdale would tell us. But there is a way out. And it's the strategic pathway. And I'm going to take you through the strategic pathway, which is one of my favorite conversations to have. And I take you through this because of what I said earlier. Even with all of the downsides and 80% of the market struggling, not everyone has to struggle. And there's a reason, and this answers that question. So as I bring you through it, I want you to think of a jigsaw puzzle. And I'm sure most of you did jigsaw puzzles when you were younger. And some of you would think back, were you sort of a corner person when you started on jigsaw puzzles? And you'd get all the corners and you'd put them and then start working your way in. Other people were shape and color. They would organize all the shapes and the colors, and they would attack the puzzle that way. So you may have been one or the other, but I will tell you from my experience, the best place to start with a jigsaw puzzle is to put the picture of the box in front of you and then start on the puzzle. What's the big picture? And so what we're going to show you today is that big picture. This is the big picture. So I'm going to assert to you that you have many of the pieces of the puzzle. And you've been doing a good job trying to squeeze those pieces together and find out which ones go where. But it's so much helpful if someone would show me the damn box, the big picture, and show me where the pieces fit in and how they all go together. And this is the strategic pathway. And if we were being technical, this is the strategic pathway that leads to a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And I'm going to bring you through this. And what I'm going to need you to do is get a blank piece of paper. If you want to make some notes on this, get a blank piece of paper out in front of you. And so what I want you to do, I'm going to highlight this. I want you to draw, you don't have to put everything I have on this, but I want you to make sure you can draw some lines much straighter than I do. But I want you to draw 2 lines on the paper that breaks it up into 3 segments, or what I'm going to call tiers. These are the 3 tiers or 3 stages of development for the law firm that moves us up through the developing the competitive advantage. So you don't have to worry about the 1, 2, 3, but I want you to make sure you have these 3 sections, 1, 2, 3. Okay? And I want you to name this bottom section. Let me get rid of our little circle here, if I can, my marker. I want you to name the bottom section the great lawyer stage. So go ahead and write that in. And what I'm going to do, you can see that each one of these stages has traps and blind spots, things that they don't understand and don't see about the stage they're at. Each one of them have strategies that are a little bit different, and each one gets certain results. So I'm going to take this great lawyer stage right now, and I'm going to blow it up, and we're just going to work on that so you can see just that segment. So we just pulled it out, and I'm going to show you that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with strategies. And so the strategies, actually, let me say something about the great lawyer stage. Let me see if I can go back. Your market is broken up, when you look at your competitors, it's broken up into these three stages. And you can write it in there if you want, but 80% of the marketplace, 80% of your competitors live right here at the great lawyer stage. This is good news. About 15% of them live at this stage, and I'll name it in a moment, and 5% live at this stage. So this is where 80% of your competitors live, and many of us, quite frankly, live here as well. So let's blow it back up. So here are the strategies that we see most attorneys that we've named the great lawyer stage. Is their strategy for getting ahead is to be a great lawyer. If I practice, if I can get a few more CLEs, if I can become a better lawyer, things are going to work out for me. Clients are going to find me. We can market a little bit, but my whole focus is around being a great lawyer. And if I work a little harder, I know it's tough, but if I come in on weekends and I work evenings and I get my staff to work a little harder, it's all going to work out. I can put in a few more hours. I can raise my rates a little bit and get things working, and it's all going to work out. And they have a strategy, and albeit maybe not a conscious strategy, I don't think you would say, this is my management style, but I'm going to tell you the management style at this level is what we call a heroic management style. And so what do I mean by a heroic management style? At this stage, and if this was a story arc, and there was a journey that we were taking, you would be the hero of the story if you were at this stage. And so the hero gets to solve all the problems. The hero gets to see any opportunities, work on them. It's hard for anything to advance in the story without the hero being part of it. And so we see at this stage the law firm is incredibly dependent on our attorney. It's hard, everyone turns them for solving problems. They're usually the lead on marketing. They're usually the lead on production. When there's an opportunity to be had, they have to see it and go at it. So they have teams sometimes, but they are still the hero. They save the day. And quite frankly, they have to carry the burden of the day on them as well. And the results, I'm starting with strategies, results, and I'll come back to blind spots. The results of this stage is we see, because they're in the doing mode, working harder and harder, they're vulnerable to the market forces, and their prices and their fees and their rates and all of that is being pushed down. We see very long hours, very little free weekends, because even if they're at home, they're somehow working. They don't really take a lot of vacations unless it's connected to the bar. The day seems endless. Lots of stress, lots of interruptions. It feels like we're just doing it. And they're very vulnerable to the market forces. So about 8 years ago, if you were a real estate attorney in the States, you could have been very easily wiped out as a practitioner. Or if you were in a state as a PI attorney and had tort reform, you could really be forced out, or a big advertiser came in. So, or another competitor came in that was much better at you at marketing. And at this stage, the result they get is they don't own a practice. The practice owns them. They don't dictate the freedom, the income, the profit. They take whatever the practice gives them. And they have a number of blind spots. I know this sounds a little odd. They don't know what they don't know. And what they don't know is that this is a business, and they don't know that there's a paradox going on, that the harder they work at this, the more and harder they work, the less they're going to make. In the Gerber model, and if you're not familiar with Michael Gerber, he wrote the book The E-Myth, he would describe this part of the stage as the technician, working in the business, doing it. They come in the morning. The first question they ask every day is, how must the business? The first question they ask every day is, what has to be done? What do I have to do? They open a pile of files. They start returning phone calls. It's all about the work. They would say the work is the most valuable thing we do. And I'll give you a different perspective in a moment. And it's not that the work isn't important, but I want to give you a higher level perspective on that. When they're working in it, they're focused on producing income and building a job. They're not necessarily focused on building a business. And they lack personal boundaries. So this is so important. They don't dictate the boundaries in their lives. So they don't say, I don't work weekends unless it's an emergency. They don't say, I'm taking a 2-week, 3-week, 4-week vacation this year. They don't say how much money they're going to take out of the practice in profit ahead of time. They take whatever's left over. And so if you don't have boundaries like weekends and vacation and profit numbers or income numbers, what happens is the business takes whatever you give it. So I can't get the work done during the day, so I come in the evening. I can't get it done during the evening, so I come in weekends. And soon I give up my personal hobbies, my interest. And so what we're doing at this stage is we're I'm going to say this, and I don't mean to offend anyone. I don't mean it in that term. But in the world of business and building a practice, we're cheating the model. So rather than work during the week and not have weekends, rather than manage the interruptions, rather than manage the team, rather than manage the marketing in those aspects, I'll cover up the inefficiencies and come in on the weekend. I don't know if that's making sense to you, but because I can't manage the business during the week, I'll cover up the inefficiencies by giving more of my time. So that's the great lawyer stage. And as we want to break through this, and so you see the line at the top, how we break through this is that we have to make a critical decision. And that critical decision is, this is a business. And if I run the business well, it will allow me to be a good lawyer. It will allow me to take great care of my clients. So this sounds like a simple intellectual shift or paradigm. But I will tell you that intellectually you'll get it, but you will spend a lifetime trying to live this, because you will fall into that heroic stage and you'll have a hard time getting out of it. So the critical decision is that this is a business, and if I run it well as a business, it will take better care of my clients, it will give me more personal freedom, it will give me more revenue, more profit, more passive income, it will give me a better team. So this next stage, once we break out, and by the way, at this stage, most of the work we do at the great lawyer stage is reactive. We're reacting to problems. It's very crisis-driven. There's lots of issues to deal with, lots of fires to put out. There's not a lot of time for planning. There's not a lot of time for thinking, contemplation on matters. It's very reactive at this level. And there's lots of stuff to clean up here as you move into the next level. But the next level is called the practice growth stage. And so I'm going to take this and I'm going to blow it up, and we're going to do the same thing. And I want you to look at the strategies and the shift in strategies and what it means to results. But even at this stage, we have blind spots. So let's blow it out. And so the strategies here. At this level, we become very marketing and revenue focused. So I will tell you that one of the most important things that you have to do, and I'll say this way, in the law firm, if you want a successful, profitable law firm, we can never, ever, 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 ever stop the marketing. We have to keep an intense focus on it. We need to build marketing machines within the organization because that allows us to be more selective with clients. That allows us to be more choosy with the clients that we get in the door. So there's an intense focus on marketing. At the great lawyer stage, what they do with marketing is they market until they get too busy and then they stop marketing. And they work through production, and when production runs out, they market again. So in the practice growth stage, we never stop marketing. There's an intense focus on it, and there's many angles to take at marketing, but it becomes intense. And we learn to raise case values, file values, retainers, and become, what that forces us to do is be more selective. So the average fee per file is going to go up when we do these things, and we're going to get better clients in the door. So the cliff notes for your law firm is this. Be far more selective with the clients that you let in the door. By the way, you won't do unless you're marketing. And the other cliff note is staffing. We have got to be far more selective with staffing because the vast majority of the headaches you have at the great lawyer stage is due to poor staffing decisions and poor client decisions, letting people in the door that create grief for you. We have to build a solid team here. So at this stage, we're starting to build sustainability at the practice growth stage. We need a firm that's less dependent on the hero and has sustainability. So that's processes, systems, and teams. So we start developing that sustainable infrastructure. So we have a process for marketing. We have a process for cash flow. We have a process for time management. We have a process for how we build a good team. And we build these pillars, if you will, that hold up the structure. Interesting way to look at it is as you break out that great lawyer stage, you have to start building these pillars or this infrastructure that holds the organization from tipping back in. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But here we're working on the business instead of directly in it all the time. So here's the if I was to phrase that differently. When I'm working on the business, I ask very different questions every morning. So the great lawyer comes in and he says, what work has to be done today? The owner at the practice growth stage, so we've stepped out of just great lawyer, we've adopted and understand we're an owner, a shareholder, a business owner of a business, of a law firm, and we've got to run it that way. So they ask different questions, and they say things like each morning, how must this business work today to produce value for the client? So do you hear the difference? Below, they said what work has to be done. Here, they said how must the business work today? How must this business work today? And then fill in the blanks so I can go home on time, so that I can increase my revenue, so that I can take care of my clients. Very, very different question. How must the business work today versus what work do I have to do today? In the practice growth stage, you are an element in the business as a substantive lawyer, but you're part of the pipeline. You're part of the work in progress. As an owner, we're working on it. And as we're working on it, where the technician or the great lawyer would say, the most valuable thing I do is the work. The owner would say, no, the work of the business is to produce value for the client. Very, very different. The work of the business is to produce value for the client. So in the great lawyer, they're building a job. Here, by the way, they're building a job that produces income. Here at the practice growth stage, we're working on a business that produces passive income. So we're building a business that's not dependent on us fully, that produces passive income. Passive income is profit. So they also, at this stage, they start to put in a management structure. So the results is we have more personal freedom. So we're not working weekends, we're taking vacations, we're coming home on time, we're seeing good revenue growth, we're seeing good profit. So at this stage, you would expect to see a minimum of 35% profit. So for every dollar that you bring in, 35% goes to the shareholders. And that's the return on investment. That's what the return you get for the investment and the liability and everything you're taking on. And by the way, if you start to get profit, it means that you're breaking through this heroic style because you can't be doing it just yourself. That's labor. And by the way, that 35% is above and beyond your salary as an attorney. And I won't say a lot about that here, but it's part of the calculation. We see far better clients, far better team. In some cases, these attorneys at this level can take month-long sabbaticals. They can double their revenue. It's a game. It starts to develop much more as a game. And they're successful by anyone's standard. So I think anyone in this 80% of the marketplace down here at the great lawyer stage would look at these people and look at these results and say they're successful. But the success is part of their traps. Interestingly enough, their income is still based on an increased personal role. So think about it. While they're much better with their team, their hourly rate or their retainers or their average fee for their contingency files are going up. But a lot of that is still based on their production. They're making far more money for the firm. But that money is not pure profit, and the firm is still dependent on them. And we see a heroic style still here. They're less of a hero here because they're doing well with their team, but there's a lot of it that's still dependent on them at many different levels. And interesting because as they look around, they're looking very successful. They get comfortable and even a little bit arrogant. And they stop looking for challenges. They stop having compelling reasons to grow and build the practice. And I think you all know that if we stop growing at some point, there's a risk of getting run over. So it's a risk here. You could stay at this stage very well, but there's some risks. And by the way, at this stage, we also like to warn you about the myth of Sisyphus. And so you remember the Greek tale about Sisyphus. He was the character that was punished by the gods, the Greek gods, and he was punished by having to push a rock up a hill. And as he pushed that rock up the hill, it got larger and larger and larger until eventually it got so big it just rolled back down over him, and he'd have to start again. And to many attorneys, especially in the great lawyer stage, that's what it feels like. You do all these things to grow your practice, and it gets so big and burdensome that it collapses on them. And quite frankly, many of them don't want to start over. They keep it small. So what we're talking about with the myth of Sisyphus is that as you climb out of this stage into the practice growth level, you've got to put in a structure, infrastructure, pillars, time management systems, marketing systems, cash flow systems, staffing systems, and great talent to make sure that it's sustainable and doesn't roll back down on you. Because we see a lot of lawyers, let me bring up our color chart again, we see a lot of lawyers do this porpoising effect. They start breaking out of this, they get up and they think into practice growth, and they're pulled back down. And we'll talk about what pulls you back down in a moment. So what we're going to do is go to the next stage. One second, get the arrow out of there. We're going to go to the next stage, which is a mastery decision. This is tricky. You're driven from the great lawyer stage into practice growth by pain. I want to escape this crisis. Here, you've got stability, organization, you're not isolated quite as much. Excuse me. So everything looks good, and that's why it's 15% of the market and only 5% make it up here. But this is out of a commitment to excellence, a commitment to greatness, not slowing down, not being hit by a truck, and they go to the next level, which we call the market leader stage. So you can put that on your worksheet. And I'm going to break this out. I'm not going to go through traps and blind spots here because it's only 5% of the market, and I've got a few other things to get through before we close. At this stage, not only do we just focus on revenue, we focus on profit as well. So we start looking for profit sensor. We develop a culture. The organization is focused on constant improvement. How to be better? So it's not just me. The organization, the culture is constant improvement. How do each of us make the organization better and better every day? And we start marketing the firm and our team versus just ourselves. We start selling and branding into the sweet part, spot, which is your profit center. And we start doing things that the rest of the marketplace isn't doing. Because we have more time here at this stage, and I'll tell you why in a moment, we can innovate. We can do marketing innovations. We can package things differently. We definitely have a management structure in place. And we've broken out of the heroic style. This is the post-heroic style of leadership in a law firm. Here, we've killed off you as the hero, and we turn your team into the hero. We turn the firm into the hero. But you are no longer the person solving all of the problems, and we consistently have to replace you along the way to do that. Here, you're recognized as the go-to firm because you can do a lot more branding. We see a lot more passive income here, a lot more passive income, a lot more personal freedom, by the way. Usually, these people can take a month off quite easily. I will tell you, we do a program that at this stage they have to take 175 days off a year. That does include weekends, but most lawyers aren't even taking weekends. They have a great team, more autonomy, personal freedom than they can imagine. So that's the market leader stage, and that's a very difficult stage to get into because you can't go from the great lawyer stage to the market leader. You have to build sustainability. You have to build talent. Now, I said there was a porpoising effect, and there's some things that drag you down. I'm going to go through them quickly, but there are things that will pull you back as you try climbing out of these stages. There are things that we call gravitational pull. So the first one is you. It's your beliefs. It's your goals. Sometimes your goals are not big enough, and you haven't seen a big enough vision to get you where you want to go. Sometimes it's your team. The team that you had here is not the team that's going to get you to the next level. Your goals sometimes are not big enough, and as long as your goals stay consistent with status quo, they're never going to get you to the next level. We have old ways of doing things, old habits. Sometimes we don't have the skills that we need. So most of the habit, skills, and goals, and even technology that we had at this level in the crisis-driven stage is insufficient to get you to the next level. So we have to watch these things. We have to watch your thinking, your team, your goals. Sometimes we call this the comfort trap because it gets to become the norm for us at this stage. And quite frankly, at this stage, even when things are working good, we develop a norm around these things. And we have to break through them. And it's harder and harder because they work better and better. So at this stage, it's crisis. Here, we've got systems, we've got profit, we've got structure, we've got the firm less dependent on you. So this explains some of what's going on, but I would tell you the other thing that we've discovered along the way, that if anywhere you grow in life, whether you're growing, you go to the gym and you want to get in better shape, or you go to the golf course and you want to become a great golfer, or you go to music and you want to become a great musician, anywhere you go to try to develop yourself to a higher level like we're doing here, there are some key strategies for change. And these strategies are consistent with any one of the things in your life that you want to develop. And you can write these down. The key strategies are for change are you have to have a compelling reason. If you're too comfortable and you're not compelled to do something, for example, I could buy you a membership to a gym, but if you're not committed to getting in weight and you don't have a big goal, the gym is going to do you no good at all. So the first thing is we have to be compelled. The great lawyer is usually compelled by pain. The practice growth stage has to be compelled by something else, big goals. The other thing is that almost anything in life, and for these, we've discovered over the years, there has to be some accountability because you are breaking through a comfort level. And it's not easy. By definition, getting uncomfortable, none of us like to be uncomfortable. And without some form of accountability, we fall into inertia. And inertia just will go wherever the longest weight is or the heaviest weight, where it pulls us, usually into the past. And there has to be a structure, a coaching structure that gives you direction and advice. Most of you have a lot of pieces of the puzzle, and we can do some of these things, but it goes so much quicker if you just have someone point out, oh, this is the answer. You don't have to wrestle with this for life. This is the thing you need to do. No, you need to fire this person. No, you need to hire that. Here's the system, A, B, C, and D, rather than trying to recreate the wheel yourself. So we find anything in life, you've got to have compelling reasons, accountability and follow-up, and some coaching structure. So, Susan, I've got a couple of things I want to say about this after this, but are there any questions? We have a few minutes, and I can open it up for a few questions, and then I'll take you to the last piece of this.
Okay, Mark. We did have someone ask me how they can get a handout of the presentation, and we are recording the webinar, so we'll have the webinar and a PDF of your presentation on our website in a few days so that can be downloaded.
Okay, great. Thanks, Susan.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? And if you have a question, just raise your hand or type it in there, and Susan will help you. If not, I'll move on to the next piece while you're formulating your questions.
I don't see anything right now, Mark.
Okay, so you may have questions. Go ahead and type them out. And so I want to talk about the last piece of this. Some of you are on this call. Some of you are Atticus clients, and you've been doing this stuff for a while. And you may have some questions about this. And some of you are saying, okay, listen, I get it, and I understand you've been doing this for a little while. Where do I fit in? If I'm in the great lawyer stage, what do I do? If I'm 80% of the marketplace, what do I do? In our world, you would do, the Atticus world, you would do the practice builder. The practice builder is a 2-day workshop that's designed, it's like in my mind, a boot camp. And it's designed to break you through this thinking, to give you the 4 cornerstones. So it's 2 days. It's designed to break us through the great lawyer stage, get through that critical distinction, give us the 4 cornerstones: staffing, marketing, time management, cash flow. How do we see all of those pieces? How do we put this whole thing together? So it's 2 days of doing that. It's got CLE, depending on the state. It has a certain number of CLE associated with it, but again, that's not the reason to do the practice builder. Do the practice builder because you want a breakthrough in your practice. And then it's $1,495, $1,495 to do it for the first attorney. And so some of you said, listen, Mark, I've been there, I'm struggling with this, and I'm porpoising. I want the practice growth. So if I want to break into that, Atticus created a practice growth program. So it includes the practice builder. So this comes with the practice growth. And then we have ongoing coaching and implementation. So in this program, it's for some people at least a year long. Sometimes they go longer, but they meet quarterly, and then they have some coaching and some work. So they meet with the team every quarter. But we're focused on building the marketing machine, putting in the sustainable cornerstones, implementing them, and putting your team together. So it's cleaning up the messes from the great lawyer stage. There's a lot of stuff to clean up. and it's putting in sustainability, it's putting in systems, it's putting in talent. That takes a little bit of time. That's $7.95 a month to do that program. The last one is the Dominate Your Market program. So it's the Market Leader program. Again, this is not for everyone. 95% of the legal universe has to work here because you can't jump here. It's a big mistake to jump here unless you've done this. And this is also includes the Practice Builder because we like you to have a common language. But here we're working on profit, personal freedom, a legacy firm, one that outlasts you, and it is also a quarterly program. It meets every quarter, and that's $15,000 a year. So that's an annual fee, not a monthly fee. It's an annual fee, and it's the highest price thing we do. So if you have questions on these, you can certainly talk to someone at Atticus, but these are the solutions we've walked people through for a long time. Also, I just want to mention there's a couple of workshops and programs coming down the pike. We're doing a one-day workshop around the country, and it's called the Double Your Revenue Workshop. And everyone that comes through that workshop will absolutely tell you that they have confidence and a game plan to double their revenue. Now, if you don't have some of your systems in place, you will have some trouble. But at least it gives you that pathway. It's one day. As a matter of fact, there's one being done today in Fort Lauderdale, and that's sold out anyways. I'll be in Boston on March 31st. All of this is on the website, and there's information on it. White Plains in May, New York in June. And why Canada isn't on this, Lonnie, I don't know. Then we do the Atticus Practice Builder. So that's the 2-day boot camp. It's done in Orlando. It's only done twice a year. The next one is April 24th and 25th. It's right around the corner. There's only 7 seats left in that. It gets filled every single year. And if you are interested, you can email Denise at Atticus Online, or you can go to the website under coaching. So Susan, I'm just going to stop again and see if there's any questions that are typed in.
Yes, we do have one here, Mark. The question is, how do I overcome the fear? I guess the fear is that the business is, in fact, dependent on me.
Yeah, you know, and that's a natural part of this process when we're breaking out of our comfort zones. But what I find is we fill in that the fear is because there's missing information. I don't trust that this will work. If I'm fearful of hiring someone, I'm fearful of firing someone, I'm fearful of the marketing won't work, I don't have enough funds to do this. And I think that information brings freedom from fear and confidence. You do a few things. So fear is going to be a big part of this at every single stage, but it's getting confidence that something works. So for those at the Practice Builder, I will tell you that most people go back and they have to let someone go. They know in their firm there are people that are not part of their big plan, they're not part of a championship team, they're not part of excellence, and they have to let somebody go, and it's a scary thing to do. But when they hear that somebody else did it and it worked, and then they get through it themselves and they get some confidence and say, okay, now I have a little bit more confidence. Maybe I could do this and I could do that. So it's very much a stepping stone. It's very much a process, but it's natural. You will be afraid during this process, but you have to keep stepping through it. And you will make mistakes, but you'll recover from the mistakes, and then you'll finish the job of building the practice properly. Is there another question, Susan?
Can this program work for a solo practitioner?
Yes, but here's the thing with a solo. I would not do the Practice Builder if I was a pure solo, meaning I had no staff, because you can't get freedom from the practice until you start hiring somebody to delegate to. And that's the scariest thing anyone will do, is hire their first person. So I don't recommend doing the Practice Builder until you get at least the equivalent of a full-time person. That could be 2 part-time or a full-time person. But I would recommend talking to Denise down there at that Atticus Online, because there are some smaller stages that get you there. But I don't think I would do the practice builder. And Susan, I'm sorry, I think that would have to be the last question. They can email you with questions at susan@atticusonline.com. That's Susan at Atticus Online, or you can email those questions to Denise or set up a call with her. We can certainly do a diagnostic to figure out where you are in that strategic pathway. So, Susan, I'm going to go ahead and close the call. It's just been this is one of the most fun things that I talk about, and I think anyone at Atticus talks about, is how you can get stay competitive in your market, how you can get more free time, how you can get more income, and how you can really have something that's going to last. So it's so exciting, and we really appreciate your trust and confidence in us to join a call like this. So with that, Susan, let's go ahead and close out. Bye, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Mark.